Hey, Dan.
Hey, George.
How's it going?
It's going really well.
You got your coffee?
I do.
You got no today.
I got no. So these were given to us by
Easy Tiger?
Easy Tiger. Oh, good for you. You remember that.
It wasn't actually Easy Tiger that gave it to us. It was somebody that wanted a job that gave us an Easy Tiger mug.
Didn't they work at Easy Tiger?
No, they worked yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, that might be.
Yeah. So if you know who you are.
You know who you are.
Yes, we got coffee.
Got our coffee, got our laptops. We've got video.
We are recording these now.
We're going to go with a little multi-distribution. If you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, go look up Crema Lab on YouTube. And you can watch us in video. Hey, everybody on video. We'll have to remember to check that because that camera just decides to go to sleep every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
It protects the sensor.
Oh, I got you. Gets too hot?
I don't know. Doesn't seem like that should be a thing, but it's 2020. I don't argue with too much anymore.
Computers have fans to help cool it down, but I don't think that camera has a fan.
That's a good point.
That is completely conjecture. If I wanted to know more about that, I would have to learn about it.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Segue. It wasn't very good, but I did it anyways. And sometimes you just have to go for it. Option 5.
Option 5. Okay.
I actually didn't mean to do that one,
Dan,
but I'm okay with that.
Let's remind the audience, we have been doing this for about over a year now. What is option 5 first? Why do we exist?
That's a deep question. But you mean option 5 as a whole?
Why does this podcast exist?
Gotcha. We won't get deep into existentialism.
Of life, no.
Okay. So option 5 is a story. So, probably 6-7 years ago now, we were we were creating a response to an RFP for a very large client. And we realized, so we were putting up all the options on the board of how we could go about accomplishing this project, which is actually fairly standard to a lot of projects that we are thinking about is, how are we going to go about it? What are all the different options? And with this one, the options for this one is, can we actually accomplish it? Not what's our process, what's our strategies, like, can we actually do it?
Are we capable of doing this?
Within our wheelhouse. Yeah. And so I don't even remember what the 4 options were now.
I don't either.
But the 5th one was say yes and figure it out, which is really our statement of saying, take a leap of faith, take a risk.
Go for it.
And go for it.
Yeah, build the plane on the way down.
Mm-hmm. And we feel like that statement, or that, I don't know if you want to call it an ethos or maybe a posture, a behavior.
See what you did there. We'll get there.
Of taking risks kind of describes a lot of how we operate here. Not whimsical, but more experimental. So we may not have all the knowledge. We may not have all the
When you
information.
say whimsical, I only ever think of like a really cheesy...
Pinwheel?
No.
That's what I was thinking.
Oh, wow. Interesting. I think of like a picture of a fairy and it's got like sparkles around it. It's in a forest. It's really misty. It's whimsical. I grew up playing too much Zelda, I think.
We're watching Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Infatuated with Tinkerbell or something.
Right. So taking risks, stepping into maybe what you're not currently qualified to do, but you're capable of potentially learning to do. Yeah, good.
And then, so as we started last year, we started talking about how we came to be, how we started really, I'll use this term loosely, operate. It sounds really structured, which it is, but how we started operating our company around this, idea
way of thinking.
Yeah, way of thinking of, again, it's not walking into a situation, foolhardily or being unwise about it, but it is having a equal mindset of, okay, we need to consider this, but it's also a risk.
Yeah,
and we're
sometimes
okay
just
with that.
go for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that, for the podcast, that's moved us into interviewing lots of people around this topic, primarily around talking about how we do it with product teams, so cross-discipline, small teams, and how we do it with technology. So the last year we've been interviewing people. We've been talking about product teams. We've been really kind of shifting away from the take risk conversation and more moved into maybe how do really great teams work. And then I think our next kind of iteration of the podcast is we iterate on ourselves and adapt to what we're learning, is exactly that, is talking about people out there just making
They're
noises.
saying they're wahooing or
Yeah.
yahooing.
Think that we have a culture around here.
Come on. No excitement.
No, but thinking about what really is, going back to that option 5, taking risks, stepping into the unknown, trying new things. What's underneath that has been something that has touched every kind of tentacle or layer of Crema?
Mm-hmm.
And
It's almost like, in the DNA.
Yeah.
It's embedded.
yeah,
Because a lot of times owners, investors, or even if, you ask this of yourself, it's like, what sets me apart? What's different? And so I think through our experience with Option 5 and talking about product teams and why we do things with product teams, it caused us to go back to the beginning of like, okay, well, what really does make us Crema?
why does a cross-discipline team work?
Right.
Why that unit? Why that structure?
Why do people really enjoy working here? Why do clients consistently say that they've had an experience with us they haven't had with other vendors?
Why are we able to recruit people? Why are we able to retain people? So there's just something in Crema, the Crema-ness of it, that we wanted to crack open and share.
Right. And it was really hard. And it still is really hard.
really hard. So I'm just gonna call it out and be a little transparent. This podcast, this next phase of the podcast, is you and I honestly getting a chance to sit down and maybe figure out what that is, so that we can continue to do it for ourselves and maybe help other people to think that way as well.
We probably need to get a couch in here and a like a leather chair
with a glass of whiskey.
And a one of those lamps that have like a green shade, like the glass. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's really yellow light, low lit.
Yeah.
It's like you
That's
see in
kind
mafia
of the opposite
movies.
of the like techie room that we're in right now.
Right. We probably don't want that type of setup. But it kind of describes.
Yeah. So imagine in your head, if you're not watching us on video, imagine in your head that we're sitting on 2 overstuffed leather chairs by a fire. We've just gotten done hunting in the mountains.
And there's an oak coffee table between us.
Yeah. At least 200 years old.
Right.
And we're going to figure out the meaning of life. we're going to unpack.
Are we going to be philosophizing? Is that a word?
I think a little bit. I think we're wanting to actually go down to the kind of base layer of what we believe helps both individuals on our team or in the organization, helps the teams themselves, and then helps the organization as a whole to flourish. And we think that this can be something that maybe other teams can benefit from. And sometimes that's going to be in a tech team, but it might be in other types of teams.
Right. It's almost, it's industry agnostic.
Yeah. So you're probably hearing it underneath the language, but we think that it has something to do with this idea of continuous learning. What would you say is the value of continually learning? I'm going to throw that
first, we probably need to talk about what do we think learning is, and maybe what do we think learning isn't.
Okay, what is learning, Dan?
Well, if you were to say, what's the secret sauce of your company? Well, we learn. I wonder what expressions we would get from people.
I know.
Like, so you're reading books?
Right.
Are you're researching?
So many different ways to learn.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And.
Okay, so let's be careful not to describe the structure yet of learning, because there are ways to learn. There's kind of the how to learn, so different methodologies. But what is learning? What is the byproduct of it? Or I don't.
Yeah, I think most images are, you went through a training, we go through school.
Classroom. You think
it's classroom, cool? Yeah. And some people might think of master apprentice, which we would probably be a little bit more in that bucket.
Closer to that, yeah.
And again, this is just a whole bunch of musings from different articles and books read. But the idea of learning is it's interacting with your environment. And I think there's lots of learning. There's adapting to the environment as it changes.
Yeah.
And then I think there's also, if you have a posture of learning, there's fresh and new ideas that come in as well, which is also learning. Because you would say if you were to go learn a new skill, or if it's like, New Year's resolution or whatever, I want to
learn to play the guitar.
Right. You're not
Never
adapting. That's something new and fresh and creative for you.
Yeah.
Someone says, I live by the ocean. I've never surfed. I don't know why. I'm going to learn surfing. They're not adapting. The environment's there. It's not like they're reactive. It's more of like it's a step forward in, it's creative outlet. You're wanting to expand your perspective. And so, and learning starts way before you get into the school or work world. I mean, it starts
day one. I mean, So, okay. So go there. What's the first way we learn? The first primary way we learn is through, I think, two things: observation, and I guess you could call it experimentation by action.
Yeah, modeling. You're modeling.
Or what do you mean by modeling?
So a lot of times, I think when your kids were young, they're modeling your behavior as they watch you do it.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, yes, but I think that's observation. Observation and modeling, maybe in the same bucket. I'm saying there's another side that is I wanted to roll over or wanted to pull my head up to get food. And so by using my muscles, I started to learn that I could make those movements. Like it was a process of doing that then becomes a habit. Then I realize some of it might be instinctual, maybe in our DNA, whatever, but I start to learn what I'm capable of doing.
Right.
So at a certain point, a kid, maybe through some coaching, but also I wonder if it would have happened anyways, starts to crawl, right? Because they realize their coordination of their hands and their feet and their muscles can allow them to get up from just laying there.
Right.
So I think it's both this observation. This is interesting. I hadn't really thought of it this way. This observation and like practicing or doing.
Yeah. And from the early stages, I feel like it's a lot of, you're learning the basics of, for human. Okay. So a child learns to walk or crawl. There's these basic for human survival, but then you get to the point of like, maybe you're 15 and you want to learn to skateboard.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
It's desire driven.
It's not, I don't need to skateboard to survive, but it's this creative expression. It's like this joy of learning. And so learning
becomes a desire.
Yeah. And so you wake up in the morning and you go throughout your day, you get back home and it's like, hey, what's one thing you learned today? We ask that of our kids all the time. And I think what we end up not doing is asking ourselves, what did I learn today? Because chances are you learned lots of new things.
My kids legitimately have asked me that question and I'll go,
and you're stumped.
To have another meeting. I don't know.
I learned that I don't like this meeting that I've been invited to.
Over and over again.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think learning is more exciting. It's more part of who we are. Maybe we just don't give the word credit.
Well, and I think maybe if you fast forward a little bit through childhood, you pretty quickly get put in, at least in a modern Western context.
Yep.
Given that you get put in an environment that we've chosen a particular way of learning, of a structure of learning that was based off of what humans did in the place and time and world that we're in. They started to normalize it so that you could apply it to lots of people, not just, one-on-one. And you started creating structures of learning. I think in some ways, I guess what I'm getting at is, first off, I was never an academic kid. So I wasn't the kid that wanted to go, I didn't love tests. I didn't really love studying, especially if I wasn't interested in the subject, which I think is true of everybody. Some people just like the process of school.
Yeah.
They like the
absolutely.
structure.
Yeah.
I was more the kid that was like, I think I could build a structure in that tree. I don't know how to build a structure in that tree, but I'm going to start nailing pieces of wood to that tree until I figure out how to build a structure of that tree,
Right.
And for me, it was that experimentation of trying and the curiosity of it.
And willing to take the risk that you're going to get in trouble that you used all your dad's nails.
So true. And the reality that I did not know what structural integrity or engineering actually was, because I was nailing boards from the bottom up.
Right.
which if you're walking on them, they just kind of fall through.
Right.
But, like, I think that for me, I think school, for better or worse, actually was, while obviously helpful in my life, don't get me wrong, was a bit detrimental for me thinking about learning being something that I'd ever want again in my life.
Yeah.
It beat it out of me over 18 years.
Right.
Or plus in college years.
Let's walk down that path a little bit. Okay, this is really interesting. So what you were describing is a little bit of like the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And I feel like our educational institutions tend to go towards a fixed mindset of here's the intelligent kids and here's not as much the intelligent kids.
Yeah, if you can't do these structured based academics, then you're smart.
Right.
If you can, or we've separated.
And so these kids get all of the expanded learning, but it's learning from, like you said, there's books, there's tutorials, there's textbooks, all of these things of their educators, teachers, whomever, they're teaching what they've known to be true. So take management science. Management science being thrown at everyone all the way up through MBAs versus this idea of experimental learning. And I'm wondering, and I'm glad that we prefaced that this is a podcast of exploring, because this is not a complete thought of you're reducing the potential for, I guess I'll call it exponential learning when you put individuals in a box. You put individuals in a structure, like a very closed environment that's based off of previous knowledge versus, well, what if this happened that's counter to what you just told me? What if we tested this, which creates a new idea, and then someone else says, what if we took that a little bit further? And so there's this exponential compounded learning. And so I'm wondering if here at Crema and other companies that we know and look up to, because there's this, what we call product teams and individuals of diverse worldviews and perspectives coming into a problem, there's not a fixed mindset. There's not a fixed box of learning. There's exponential learning.
And yes, I think I'm following you, because I think also...
Good, because I don't know if I completely followed myself.
If you guys are following Dan, then you're doing better than I did, because I lied. I didn't follow anything Dan just said. I'm just kidding. No, I would say yes, and what ends up happening if we're talking about the flourishing of an individual, a team, or a company, that there's something enjoyable about the exploratory nature of that type of learning. About there are structures in it, there are disciplines in it, there are postures to it, but it is exploratory in nature, and that can be exciting because you get to pursue something of interest, even if it's in the context of something you don't necessarily love.
Right.
So I might be in a job that I don't absolutely adore, but I can create moments and opportunities of learning in order that I can flourish, I can improve, maybe my team would benefit from that, and I can find something I'm interested in.
Right.
Again, like grabbing a bucket of nails and some boards and saying, I wonder if I can build a structure in that tree. Yeah. And it's not to say that I wouldn't have built a better structure had I gone and done a little bit of research on how tree houses are built or how engineering works.
Right.
But it's kind of a both and because I'm interested in it, right, I'm going to flourish doing it, and I'm going to have more excitement, and I'm probably going to get to a better outcome because I'm going to invest that additional effort and time.
Right. So I think, so there we talked a little bit, that's a long path, but we started down the path of like the joy, almost the intrinsic value of learning, but then there's also the adaptive learning. And so I think our culture and the time of technology that we live in, the statement of, well, that's because we've always done it that way, is no longer sufficient.
I think it's
detrimental.
Obsolete.
It's obsolete, and maybe even detrimental, because if you think about before all of Technologies all throughout history. We'll just go with, software.
Yeah.
Software and
talk about where we are now. Yeah.
Things move so fast. Technology
The
moves
rate of change
the rate of change is changing. There's like meta change going on that you can't say this is the way we've always done things anymore, because what we did 6 months ago has changed. So we can't continue to do what we did 6 months ago.
I know. We're redesigning our website again.
Yeah.
not yet.
Example.
Not yet, but almost.
But just sure, I'm sure, values, vision, mission, even principles will stay the same, but the expression
to an extent,
of those,
they adapt, or they iterate, they refine.
Yeah. Because there was an environment where things did stay relatively the same for like 20 years. The Industrial Revolution is like, okay, sure, new inventions here and
if
there.
you're looking at a graph,
but for the most part,
or hockey stick,
you could pretty much get through your entire job of 30 years and maybe some changes, but not the monumental change that we see now of like, if someone were to stay with the same company now for 40 years, can you imagine the change? Like if they were to diary all of it, that would be, would actually be really interesting.
Well, I mean, I was at a dinner the other night with a guy that worked with my dad. And they both worked for the same nuclear power plant for 32 plus years. And to a great extent, the only thing that changed inside the power plant, other than maybe some technological improvements and, things like that, but minor, was the regulations around nuclear power. That was the thing that changed the most, is that we just have to keep the government happy.
And the food and the vending machines. That's really
probably. And the cars that drove up to the building.
Right.
But that change didn't happen as fast. Now, what ended up happening is as they started to retire, what they were noticing was there was a generation of people coming in that expected things to be changing faster. And they were asking hard questions about, why is it this way? Why can't it be better? Why can't we improve? Why can't, and then people started to retire. They were trying to get more work out of less, that change started to take place, and it became exponential even inside that one very traditional organization.
Right.
And I think we haven't seen, we work with companies of all sizes now.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, to the biggest in the world to, startups, all of them are experiencing this. There isn't one company that's not experiencing this that I can think of.
And I think to get ahead, organizations, and there's tons of research about learning organizations, but they practice both types of learning.
Yeah.
We work with a lot of clients, and we know even just different peers throughout different industries of being tasked with the immense challenge of, we got to innovate, go innovate. That's reactive learning. That is good, but it's not complete, because
and it's often too late.
And it's too late. It's hard, and there's a ton of pressure on whomever was tasked with. Oh, go innovate. Well, innovate what?
Yeah.
What are we trying to fix?
Yeah.
That's one type of learning. The other type of learning is like the continuous desire that's embedded of, we're going to learn just for the sake, because we feel that's what's important. That's what is competitive. That's what keeps us moving forward in the right direction. And so
we're doing it early and often.
It's just part of who we are and what we do.
Yeah.
And I think that type of learning is what we've seen has gotten us Crema to where Crema is today. And we're really happy with Crema, but we know we haven't arrived. We have not fully arrived.
We haven't. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah. I forgot to tell you the other day, we have not fully arrived.
Right.
And we're okay with that, because there's this mindset of continuous learning.
Well, let's jump into that in just a second. Okay. So you were kind of unpacking this idea of the fact that Crema has not arrived yet, which means that even though we feel really confident about where we've come in the last 10 years, intentionally being the size that we wanted to be, we didn't want to be a massive company. We're about the size of where we want to be right now. And we're really happy with all that. But yet we know that I think I've said this recently, and we've kind of agreed that if we're the same company in 2 years from now that we are today, we'll be obsolete. Or nearly
irrelevant at best.
Yeah. Obsolete at worst. Yeah. And at that point, it's like, well, that was a fun ride.
Right.
Because if I look at Crema 2 years ago, we're a different company than we were then.
Mm-hmm.
A lot's the same. Don't get me wrong. We're still on the same path, on the same train, but we have adapted and learned and iterated and refined a ton to be where we are today.
Right. And some people might be wondering, okay, what aspects of a team or a company or whatever should be continuously experimented on or learned on?
Yeah.
And I would say anything outside of your mission, vision, and values should be consistently looked at.
Let me push you. Should those things ever be pushed on?
I don't have an answer to that.
We kind of did. We rebuilt our vision statement last year. We updated it. It was very much still in line. We adapt. We iterated on it to kind of refine it to what we.
Yeah, I think depending on the length of, okay, we're setting a 5-year vision. You could arrive there.
Yeah,
for sure. I think values and mission, the purpose of why you are here, probably stays fairly similar throughout the years of your business.
Unless, okay, so I'll use an example. And maybe they have a more of a common denominator of what that value or vision was. DuPont, I think originally they were a gunpowder company. I think that was what they were started as. I mean, 1,000 years ago.
Right.
I don't know how long ago it was. And now I think they're one of the largest producers of rubber in the world and other basic materials.
Right.
I don't know if their original vision said, let's be the best materials company in the world.
Right.
They may have said, create the best gunpowder ever.
Right.
And they learned how to create other things. And I think that's an okay thing to say, well, we can adapt what our vision is for the types of things that we can make, that, even the way we make them. Obviously they don't make gunpowder the same way they used to 150 years ago. So I think I'm almost okay to say you can press into those things, but be careful when you start pressing into the mission, vision, values that you're not
why?
Taking your people through
why the shift? Because most of the time, if you even start to make a decision that's questionable, and I hope that your team does this, they'll say, does that line up with who we are?
Yeah.
What they're saying is like, does that line up with the core of who we are?
Yeah.
Which for the most companies are why you're in business, why you started, and what are the behaviors that are going to help us know if we're operating the way we want to operate.
Okay, I agree. Let's get back to kind of the what is learning, the value of learning. And this may be something we talk about over the next couple episodes because it's just a big topic to unpack. And I think maybe this conversation helps us to think about questions to ask. What are some things that learning, what in the different styles, what do they lead to? So we're a learning organization, but to what end? We've already talked a little bit about it, like you just have to keep up with the market, but that's kind of the organizational value. What are other values of being in a constant mind of exploration and learning? Exploration is a really good word, by the way. I've said this before. I'm not sure that learning is the right word. I feel like that's something either greater or more specific than just learning.
Quest. Expeditionary.
Yes. Exploration, I think, is good. The adaptive is maybe, you said that's more reactionary, which I think is interesting. But getting back to that, what are some other things that learning leads to, or what some outcomes of learning at all the different levels of an organization? That's a big question. Maybe that's too big.
Well, as an individual, there's self-discovery. So maybe you learn more about yourself, which is big. And honestly, I think companies have a responsibility to help their employees do that to a certain extent.
Interesting. I bet there's a lot of people that would go, that's not my job.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Do I think it's my or our job to fully make sure
a person's happy?
That's impossible. And if you set out on that, I'm sorry, but you're going to fail, because happiness is circumstantial and you can't control all the circumstances. But I think we have a responsibility to put people in a place to where they can feel really fulfilled in their work and be like, I would hope that if you were to say, why do you like your job? That your employee would say, because it's meaningful and you've helped me see it's meaningful. I think we have a responsibility to do that.
This is
work
very,
is
it's very, I hate to say it's on trend, but it is very much on trend, this kind of purpose-driven organization kind of mentality. And I love it. I would agree with it. But I think what you're getting at is more of not just an organizational purpose, but an individual purpose. How can a person, I want to be careful because I've often said that I don't desire to give someone an identity, but I do desire to help them find purpose in their work. And I think I want to separate those.
They're integrated, but they don't. But I totally agree.
Because if their identity is wrapped up in Crema, we've talked about this on previous episodes. If their identity is wrapped up in Crema, we're going to greatly disappoint them.
Yeah. Identity is so many different things. I mean, it's everything wrapped up into one whole person. And if we have a little piece of that in their work, then we want to do our best to make sure they're fulfilled in that area. So I think there's people finding meaning in their work, dignity in their work. So I think learning and exploration does that. And if you think about it, and maybe this is why so many change efforts fail, is from a top-down perspective, is because the individuals that you want to adopt this learning don't believe in it. They haven't been, not trained, maybe
inspired.
They haven't been inspired to learn, maybe not even inspired, maybe quit inspiring them towards a vision, inspire them to learn first, learn about what they do best, what the company does best, and maybe then that will inspire them towards a vision. But maybe it's like this is going to be a horrible analogy. It's like a virus.
Yes.
It's like it goes to the cellular level. If you want to affect the body, the virus goes to the cellular level. And so if you think about change efforts, start with retraining, getting people to unlearn and relearn on an individual level.
Love those words.
And then you get to the team. And then if the team does it, then you have teams of teams, which is really what an organization is. Yeah. So I think you start with one, and maybe we're starting with the wrong thing. Maybe we're starting with the whole and we need to go to the individual. I don't know.
Well, I think, so we've been thinking about this a little bit already. So this is our exploration is a little bit in context to some ideas that we've had recently. I do think, I don't want to get too much into the structure, but I do think you're right. It happens at, I think, 3 levels. First at the individual. So hopefully they're finding meaning and flourishing. They're finding curiosity and exploration in the work that they're doing. They want to do better work because they're super interested in it, because it's intriguing. I like that word too, intriguing. Team. So that's the individual. The second is team. So now put a group of individuals together, and how do they learn together? So this is a cross-discipline team. Traditionally, it might have been a department, but departments create silos. Silos kind of reduce learning because you're not actually sharing information. So you start to put cross-discipline teams in place, and now there's different ceremonies and practices and disciplines and structures that are helping a team learn together. Whether it's they're trying to learn what the outcome of their initiative is, or they're trying to learn how to work better together, or they're trying to learn a new technology or a new skill. All those things happen in a collaboration.
Right.
And then, of course, like you said, teams of teams. Now you've got this layer that is the organization as a whole. Now that may be a small org if it's a startup or a small business, or it may be a massive enterprise. And they need to be thinking as well and supporting and creating a culture, an environment, and a posture of continuous learning and being prepared to adapt and change, somewhat reactionary sometimes, but maybe more proactively through, what was the other type of learning you said? Continuous or
creative, generative. I mean, it's fresh, it's new, it's
explorative.
Yeah.
So that's at that organizational level, and that's more really, it tends to be the leadership that needs to be thinking about that. And each of those has to exist. Now, one, you could have the bottom up approach where like you get one person that just gets excited about an idea. They start to pursue it. They're exploring it. They're researching it. They're learning about it. They get a team bought in. The team gets excited. We're going to try this new way of working. And oh, by the way, there's another team that goes, wow, that team's really succeeding.
Right.
And then that starts to grow. And like you said, it's a virus that kind of starts to take over, that now an organizational has a change. But I will say that can start to happen. And if you get a boss or a leader that has a posture that says, I don't like that way of working,
right,
they can squash it immediately.
Right.
And then kill it.
I wonder if that's why a lot of times, I wonder if this would be really hard in a public company when you have an organization maybe that operates that way, is successful, has their set of values, and then for whatever reason, a new CEO comes in who maybe thinks to the counter. You know, maybe they think in a way.
Yeah, that change.
I don't even have a point there. That's just more of a musing, not amusing, space musing of mine. Sorry, I'm just doing a mental experiment. Right?
I'm trying to look up.
I did think though of growth mindset. If an individual can do it, but then you have teams of teams doing it, I can only imagine the compounded and exponential growth and intelligence of the team because of that.
Well,
if you think it's like, you might say, I'm smarter. These people make me smarter, which I totally think is true.
Sure.
I think take it one step further of, they don't just make me smarter. Our whole team collectively is so much more intelligent than this one person over here.
Oh, yeah.
And if you have a whole org, then you get someone saying, that is a smart company, like intelligent company.
Interesting. It makes me think of, I'm trying to think of the right scientific term, but it's this idea of like the fact that we actually don't think, it's kind of like the hive mentality that, you know, bees literally cannot survive on their own. They only survive as a hive. They think as a hive, they move, and they react as a hive. And actually there's studies to show that human beings are very much the same way, that we start to break down when we're isolated and that we don't have other human interaction.
Sure. 100% believe that.
And then also, I mean, we live in such a independent society that values the independence and isolation and do you love yourself, and are you having time to go meditate, which not all good things, it's nothing less than that, but there is a certain value to the group that I think comes from, we're learning from each other, we're reacting to each other, we're growing together, God willing, we're becoming better together. Sometimes the group is as a negative think, but
right. Goes towards a
mob
evil philosophy. Yeah.
Okay. I was looking up, I know Ray, what's Ray's last name? The principles guy. Is it Ray Dalio? His principles book, their organization's really, I mean, it's a massive, I think hedge fund, or investment fund. And they work almost to the nth degree of this, that they're constantly building in feedback loops to be learning all the time. I think as we move through this conversation, we should probably pull out other companies that are doing this well. Google does this, Spotify does this. Obviously, a lot of technology companies built their model around working this new way.
Yep.
But DuPont's a good example of adapting and iterating over time and learning.
Well, I think even making sure that we give credit to all the individuals that we've been researching as well in this realm.
You know, Jeff Godolph, when I interviewed him, I think what I loved about his book, looking back, I think it's what started us thinking about that was when he talked about a company's greatest value ought to be learning. I mean, he went through a bunch of other things, you know, lean and iterative and small cross-discipline teams, but the greatest value should be focused on learning.
Yeah, we recently just got done reading Brave New Work by Aaron Dignan.
Good. So good.
We just started The Fifth Discipline by Peter Singe, which is fantastic. There's a lot of research out there from him about the learning organization and the value of embracing that. Did our video just go off?
We got derailed.
We did, a little bit.
The camera stopped. We had to turn it back on. The battery was dead.
We learned something about the camera, though.
What's that?
What you just said?
What did I say?
You said something about...
Oh, that it's...
Sorry, I was also reading an article while you were doing that.
You were learning. That it's is meant to be more of a snapshot and take short clips, not to sit on for 20 to 30, 40, 45 plus minutes.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So I think maybe this is a good place for us to hit pause because we've talked about really three things. Well, one thing and then kind of sub things underneath of it is learning. What is it, the value of it, and why we've discovered pretty confidently that's what has gotten Crema to where we are today.
I would agree.
And so what our hope is that we continue to unpack this idea of a, whatever you want to call it, a learning organization, an exploratory organization, a company
Help us with the name, people.
that sees the value in consistently helping individuals, teams, and the company as a whole get better through learning, testing, measuring, whatever scientific method, terminology you want to use, but the idea of taking in learning and applying it so that we can get better.
I like it. So next time, let's do some research. Let's dig a little deeper. We've got lots of resources.
Well, and we're going to be doing a lot of learning in the next couple of weeks.
It's true. We're going across the pond, as they say. To spend some time with some consultants that we've been working with. Love those guys. I'm so excited to spend some time with them and get to learn from some other agencies, I think.
Absolutely.
So maybe we can bounce this off of them. And transparently, we have a goal. We have an end goal in mind for why we're talking about this stuff, why we're kind of using the podcast as a time to flesh it out. And I hope you will stick with us as we explore this together. We have been in business for 10 years. And we think that, like we've said before, there's something unique about Crema. We've worked with lots of companies that have interacted with us. I mean, in some cases, we've had people that have been our clients that have basically been like, can I just come work for you?
Right.
And I'm like, well, why? Like, no, because we want the contract.
Right.
But there is something that we've learned from other organizations, from authors, from mentors, and we'll talk more about that we think that there's an ethos to the way that we run Crema, giving autonomy and space to explore, become better as individuals, teams, and as an organization. So we're actually moving towards creating 3 different tracks of this. One is possibly a published thing, probably a book of some sorts.
We want to be a writer.
We want to be writers. And so, we're headed towards that. And this is our opportunity to sit down and kind of explore some of these ideas. Also, possibly doing some speaking on this. We've already kind of gotten a chance to speak into culture quite a bit in the past. And I think I always have this a little bit of hesitation because I know what defines our culture. I can describe it, but I want to get under the skin of what drives it. And I think it's this. I think it's this mindset, this posture of learning. So speaking, and then also we want to train other organizations, whether it's our clients or maybe it's you as an individual. We want to create a space, some material for you to be able to take this and apply it back to your orgs, to your teams, to yourself. And so this is all going to be kind of coming together at the same time over the rest of the year. So this might be a long haul to watch us meander through some thoughts to get to a finished product.
It could be a long journey, but that's okay.
But I'm excited for it. So stick with us as we unpack on option 5 episode what it means to be a learning organization. But we might call it something else later.
Help us with it.
Yeah. Got any ideas for names. As always, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. It really means a lot that you would take the time, maybe, this is probably 45 minutes or an hour, I don't know, to sit down and listen. I hope that you get a sense that you're having a cup of coffee with us, that you're sitting in that big overstuffed leather chair right next to us.
Like surrounded by leather-bound books.
Oh, yes. There's a coat of arms over there. Coat of arms? Is that the right term?
Isn't it a coat of arms? Crest?
And then maybe
some sort of
armor,
family crest with an armorry next to it.
Yeah, there's
old
muskets.
There's
a big moose head up again above the fireplace.
With a bearskin rug.
Gosh, this is far more manly than I am. I hope that you are feeling like you get to sit down and hear us work through some things. And also, I hope that you're subscribed. So if you're not, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, on Spotify, on Overcast, on pretty much anywhere you get your podcast. And a huge, huge, huge favor, if you've gotten this far, would you leave us a review?
Please.
please. A 5-star review would be
wonderful.
really great.
But we'll take 4.
We'll take 4. Honestly, if you just write a review, it goes a long way to telling the world that we exist.
And if you give 3 or less, give us some feedback so that we can learn and change.
I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of feedback. Just kidding. And then we're going to wrap up this episode with maybe some learning from our team. So stay tuned for that. As always, thank you for listening to Option 5, and we'll see you guys next time. Oh, I think I'm supposed to tell you to go to crema.s/podcast or crema.s/option5 to learn more or to see the show notes. So I did that right then.
My name is Julie Branson, and I'm the content writer here at Crema. I serve the growth team by writing clear and compelling Crema content for various online platforms and digital spaces. I absolutely love working at Crema as I'm pushed to become better at what I do and fully supported and encouraged every step of the way. Option 5 is a podcast by Crema, a digital product agency that creates web and mobile apps for disruptive companies and industry leaders. We believe that design, technology, and culture can help create a world where individuals and companies thrive. Learn more at crema.us.